Fear doesn't come from the Lord. Guess where it comes from? The same place where doubt comes from. When you find yourself choosing not to do something because of fear, look at your situation again, because fear doesn't come from the Lord. What reason did Joshua have for being courageous as God commanded anyway? Well, let's see. He was already equipped for the job. He had been Moses' aide. He had the Lord's promises for God's presence, for God's faithfulness, and for success. Joshua didn't have reason to doubt or to be fearful. Someone say, God is speaking.
God is speaking.
2 weeks ago, my mother was reading about Elijah. I saw her walking around the house with the book, The Elijah Task. We went to church that Sunday in Savannah, only to discover that a new pastor had been selected. It was somewhat of a surprise. We knew the old pastor was leaving, but didn't know how long it would take for a new one to be put into place. In fact, this Sunday that we saw him was his second Sunday there. We missed the first one because Mom was here bringing the message. So there he was, and if there is one word I can use to describe the new pastor, it is this one: bold. He is a courageous man, maybe even a little too courageous. He pretty much told the congregation he didn't care if they liked him or not. They could leave if they wanted. That day, he opened the Bible to 1 Kings 17, and my mom made a face at me. She had already read it. It happens all the time. Somebody say, God is speaking.
God is speaking.
There are no coincidences.
There are no coincidences.
That was 2 weeks ago. Now here I am researching courage. Where do you think I ended up? 1 Kings 17. Also, as I was putting this message together, my Christian coworker happened to ask me if I had seen the new Will Smith movie yet. I had not, and told him the critics were pretty tough on it. Well, he had seen it and said that in a funny way, it ministered to him. He said in one scene, Will tells his son, fear is a choice. Danger is real. Someone say, God is speaking.
God is speaking.
I just smiled and said, guess what my message on Saturday is about? There are no coincidences. So let's visit Elijah. Throughout the Bible, God would call a king and a prophet. When Elijah was called, he was assigned to a really nasty king by the name of Ahab. King Ahab is said to have done more evil than any king of Judah to come before him. Elijah seems to have pretty bad luck. Why couldn't he have been the prophet when a good king was on the throne? Well, it doesn't work that way. God has something to teach Elijah, and when Elijah gets a hold of it, it will be something so big that it'll be passed along to Elisha. Someone say, God has a plan.
God has a plan.
How many of you here have an evil boss at work? Maybe God has something to teach you. As if Ahab weren't bad enough, his wife, Jezebel, literally enjoys killing God's prophets. So Ahab is worshiping Baal and erecting Asherah poles instead of serving God. Baal is supposed to be the god of rain and thunder, and the female Asherah is supposed to make the land fertile. So God has Elijah go tell the evil king that he's calling down a drought. Let's see the land be wet and fertile now. The result is, not only are Ahab and Jezebel angry with Elijah, but now food is scarce. Somebody say, economic recession.
Economic recession.
Next comes the famous story. God tells Elijah exactly where to go, near a brook, and he even sends ravens to feed him. There are so many things incredible about this. Just consider for a moment that ravens are scavengers. He picked just about the most unlikely creature to feed Elijah. In fact, our new pastor in Savannah commented, he could have picked messenger pigeons. They're used to giving things back and forth. Ravens are not. Then the brook dries up, and God tells Elijah to go visit a certain widow and ask her for bread. You know the story. The funny thing is, to me, personally, asking the widow for bread would have been even scarier than facing the wicked king. You may say, what? That's crazy. The king could have killed Elijah. In fact, later, Jezebel starts chasing Elijah. But I personally have a hard time asking for help. I have a friend who is an expert in AC repair. Every year, we try to get ours checked out just to maintain it and not to be blindsided if it should just up and stop working all of a sudden. I asked him if he would check mine out, which was awkward, and he said he would, and then I still had a hard time reminding him that he said he would and to try to come. I didn't want to bother him. I was afraid he would say no. I didn't want him to have to go out of his way. I was afraid of what he would think of me, demanding things of him, even though I offered to pay him and he refused. If I didn't swallow my pride and stay the course, I would have lost out on a diagnosis I know I can trust because someone else might have cheated me. I would have had to pay for the service and lost the money for no good reason because someone was offering to do it for free. And I would not have enjoyed peace of mind. And really, I would have robbed him of the chance to bless me. Him, my friend, and him, my God, who was using my friend. If Elijah had been afraid, not only would he have gone hungry, but the widow and her son would have died. Giving into fear and disobeying in this case would have robbed someone else of a blessing. Someone say, it's not just about you.
It's not just about you.
God is also teaching Elijah to be flexible. He doesn't always work the same way. He may use a bird. He may use a widow. Later we see this echoed because he proves to Elijah he won't always use fire and storms as Elijah was used to. Suddenly God used a whispering wind. At any rate, by the time we get to 1 Kings 19, Elijah has just witnessed the miracle of his life up until that point. There had been a test between the God of Israel and the pagan gods, and the living God won, consuming an altar with fire. This should have been Elijah's most bold and courageous moment. He knew his God could do anything, but instead, what happens? Jezebel threatens him, and he gets scared, and he runs away. He begs God to kill him because he's tired of trying. Elijah falls into depression and totally gives up. He says, this stinks. I'm going to sleep. Has anyone ever been there before? The Lord asks him, what are you doing here? If he were from South Georgia, he'd probably say, what are you doing here, dummy? Really? Now's the time you want to hide? We're fortunate God is more patient with us.
Yes.
Somebody say, it ain't no time to hide.
It ain't no time to hide.
Somebody say, it ain't no time to lay down.
It ain't no time to lay down.
But the Lord is my strength.
But the Lord is my
Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength.
Yes.
It is all taken care of. God has a plan. What happened to Jezebel? She's betrayed, thrown to her death, trampled by horses, and then eaten by dogs. Yikes. What happened to Elijah? He's taken up to heaven in a fiery chariot.
Yes.
God has a plan, so be courageous. Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah.